This is IA Forward, your playbook for success as an independent insurance agent. Now, here to help you knock it out of the ballpark are your hosts, Shane Tatum, Mike Basil, and Tanya Lead.
Welcome to IA Forward. And we have actually found a topic that in 300 and almost 20 episodes, we have not discussed.
The Savannah bananas.
I think we've actually discussed the Savannah bananas because when we did your daughter's engagement announcement, I had a Savannah bananas banana ball then. But I'm always up to discussing the bananas. So if that's where we're going, let's do it.
Well, I don't know about that, but I do have one update for everyone. In the episode where Shane wasn't in, it came to light that I had never received anything from Integra outside of a hand-me-down shirt, which I just happen to be wearing today. But I, at conference, did receive the crystal block. So, I mean, I feel awesome.
Whose crystal block did you steal?
I didn't. No. I didn't. No, I didn't.
It was gifted. It was gifted to him. There was no theft of property while in Texas. He's not under arrest.
So this is justified everything I've worked hard to achieve.
Absolutely. If you've received the is that crystal? What do we call that? Crystal?
It's crystal.
Is that if you've received the crystal leadership cube with core values and slogans on it, then you've reached the pinnacle of Integra success, 100%. So
wait. Let's not talk too much about the leadership part. I mean, someone listens to this podcast and they say I'm getting something about leadership. Let's leave that part out.
Well, there
we go.
There's no more rungs on the ladder to climb, Mike. You've reached the top of the ladder.
I feel great.
Yeah, once he gets a ribbon on his name tag, though, that's next level. I just want to point out, after 8 years, I had to bring my own ribbon this time.
Well,
which I did.
Yeah, that the leadership doesn't get ribbon because we don't do ribbons. Mm-hmm. We provide ribbons to others, but you're supposed to be intrinsically confident that you don't need a ribbon.
Well, I brought my own anyway.
The whole point, right?
You have no idea how bad I felt about myself not thinking of that when I saw your ribbon.
So bringing your own?
That was
so just so our listeners know, I brought a ribbon to conference to go on my name tag.
We've now covered the high point and the low point of conference for me.
Then my ribbon said, my ribbon is better than yours.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I brought my own. But anyway, the new topic that we have not yet covered is non-resident licensing. And this one to me goes to that whole idea as an agency owner. You're thinking, how do I get more leads? How do I grow revenue? How do I do all the things? I have two or three of my best clients have moved. And so I'm going to get a non-area license, a non-resident license to try to help those guys so I'm not losing them as clients. Or is it a good growth strategy, or am I over dependent on one market? All of the things.
So Tanya, I'm sure you hear this all the time when you're talking to new agents like I do. That's one of the first questions. It's definitely in the top 5 of questions I always hear. Well, I'm in whatever. I'm in Ohio. So can I get Pennsylvania? Can I get New York? Some surrounding states is always a question I'm hearing up front. And it's just, let's just remove whether you should for a moment. We will get to that. But even just the can is a problem, especially in the past with the market being a little tighter. Carriers were not particularly interested in taking business away from people who are in those areas to give it to someone who's not in that area.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things on this. That's right. But it really had to do with capacity, right? And so between 2023, 24, and most of 25, there was this carrier strategy to leave capacity in a given state for the resident agents of that state. That's why there was a lot of pushback on giving access, extending your appointment into a non-resident environment. Now, before that, there was probably couple of decades at least of it's just pretty much free market. Like if you had a license, you could pretty much, extend within reason, your appointment across to multiple states. It was the cost of getting the license in that state. And then your ability to, most of the time with most major carriers, prove out some type of business plan that justifies the cost to the carrier for expanding your appointment across, other states, because it costs the carrier appointment fees. There is cost associated for the carrier on their side of things to do a non-resident appointment across other states for one of their agents.
I understand the idea of capturing referrals that you're turning away, or when you have a really great client that maybe has a beach property, a vacation home. There are so many reasons that I can see that agents want to do this. It just makes sense. So do we believe that it's a good idea or a bad idea?
I don't know about we. I know what I believe. I will let you guys, throw your opinions in there as well, or even just question what I believe. And I think that chasing a client or two that's moving on the surface, because we're salespeople and we take it personal and, we don't like to lose clients. Like it's like, okay, do I spend $500 on this state's non-resident license fee, or whatever, whatever it is? It's probably anywhere from $300 to $500 a year for you to have that license. Does that state reciprocate? Okay, so let me say what that big word means. There are a handful of states who may not reciprocate with the state that you're a resident of, right? And so it's not just a rubber stamp, get a license, show your E&O, do the paperwork, pay the fee. There are a few who are a little more, maybe my word, they're protective of their residents, and you actually have to do something more. You don't just get this rubber stamp reciprocation to your resident state. And so that's rare, like probably less than 5%, 3% of the states, probably a handful of the states that don't do that. And so that really won't be a problem for most of us. The issue just comes down to a little bit of cost on your end. And if you're only going to do this to keep an account that's paying you maybe the same amount of money that you're going to spend, why? Like if you don't have a bigger plan for that, if you're not going to market that state, then I've never understood why you want to spend those dollars to just hang on to that one or two clients. Now, if that client also happens to be a mortgage broker or a huge referral source for you, and they're going to refer you business from that new non-resident state, different ball game maybe. Maybe it's a different approach. And so my opinion is that insurance is still local. That's where people are. And if you're doing it just to hang on to a client, if there's not a grow your business kind of thought behind the non-resident approach, then I would seriously like you to ask yourself, is this really, really worth it? Is this where I need to invest my money and my time and my energy into a non-resident plan?
So what exactly do you mean by the plan? Because a lot of times what I see agents do is they'll hop on to ChatGPT or they'll Google, marketing plans for insurance agency, and then they copy and they paste and that's it. And we see that. I mean, I get it. But what are you really talking about when you say the plan?
Yeah. First of all, don't do that. That's overkill. That's not what I mean. What the carrier rep is wanting to know is, what is your sales plan, production plan? Like numbers, not like this big formatted outline of your quote business plan for the non-resident state that you're asking for. But hey, how are you going to replicate your success in your resident state? Because we're going to assume that you're successful and you're doing what you're being successful. Because if you're asking for that and you haven't really been successful with a carrier in your resident state, well, they're going to really question that. So let's just know that, level set that thing first. Take care of the home base first. Then is there a numbers plan? Is there a sales plan? How are you going to make this worth our while as a carrier on the carrier side? Got to understand what they're thinking, how they're thinking, because they're going to pay for these appointment fees. They're going to go through this process. They may have to get approval from their boss in order for you to have this extended appointment. So as everybody's going through this exercise, it can't really just be, well, my buddy Joe's moving to Virginia, right? Like that's not enough. That's generally not enough to justify it. It needs to be, hey, I really think I have an opportunity because of these 2 or 3 reasons for to grow my business in XYZ state, and this is what I think I can do over the next 6 to 12 months, and then over the next 2 to 3 years. That's what I mean by what's your plan.
So I get this idea of wanting to build this agency with reach, right? And you talk about insurance is local. So why do you think local is better?
Well, I think there's just a familiarness, a proximity to your clientele. There's cultural differences the farther away from home base that you get. There's just a lot of different things that you understand and your customer understands about you. The local agent is I'm very much a champion of the local agent. I think that we went through, especially in the early 2000s, we were at the dawn of the internet, and there were a lot of, it's hard to call them direct because they were insurance agencies, right? So that's weird to me. They like to call themselves direct, quote direct. But what they were national in scope, 40, 50 states. They were marketing themselves on the internet. They were doing a ton of lead buys. They were high volume quote machines, and you could just go online, get a quote, that type of thing. But underneath the hood, they were an insurance agency, right? And carriers went through this of, do they approve them? Do they not approve them? Some of them went into what they call platform agencies or national account platform agencies. There's a few of them that still exist today. Nothing, great, but the overwhelming majority of independent agents around the country are local, right? And this idea of increasing your cost, because it costs a lot of money to quote be national, right? I mean, for us as an agency network, we even have really wrestled with this. Like, we are not trying to necessarily just be national because it's expensive. I mean, being licensed in 50 states, or, just even in the continental US, right? That can run you $25,000 to $30,000 a year in licensing fees. You end up having to hire a licensing firm. We have a licensing firm we pay fees to. We pay them for their service. I know that's way beyond the one or two non-resident states that a lot of agents talk about. And there are some unique differences and things that I would agree with that we can get into in a second. But I just feel like your customer and your customer knows you on that local scale. And in most cases, in most independent agencies, you have enough business right underneath your nose to really focus on your local market.
So here's a spot that I think it does work. And this, I'm going to use a term here that I don't know if people in the South know this term or not. We're about to find out. But, if you're someone who's been in the insurance agency or you've been an independent agent for a while, you know how it works, you're settled in your area, somewhere up north, and now you're looking to grow a little bit, and you happen to be a snowbird. Do we know this term?
I do.
I live in Florida.
I saw one the other day.
Yeah.
I saw one the other day. They were creeping down to Texas.
So in that situation where you kind of really do have two home bases,
Sure.
To me that works. And that can definitely work. So, you've got whatever, or Florida is generally the spot for the Northeast. You've got a home in Fort Myers and a home in Buffalo, New York. You can be productive and you can be the local guy in both places.
I think that's the exception. I think, yes. I have no argument against that. I think that you're involved in your community. And so you're maybe dual local, maybe, I don't know, make up a word there. But you can actually be local in both cases in that. And I don't necessarily think of that example when I'm thinking of what I hear from agents most of the time. I think that really, really works for those that are at the latter stages of their career, especially, or maybe they've just been extremely successful financially and they have an opportunity to have that second home. I know that we had an individual several years ago who was doing that in both Texas and the state of Washington. They lived up near the Canadian border, and they lived in an RV in the summers up near the Canadian border in the state of Washington. And then they lived in Galveston in the winters, and they were doing both Texas and the state of Washington. They had two state licenses. They had a resident state license of Texas and a non-resident state license in Washington. And it worked, right? They sold to their community in both areas. And so I've actually seen that work and be successful.
Does it add value as far as resale goes, or as far as catastrophe diversification? Are those good reasons to do it, or does that exist?
So I'll take both, and I have an opinion on both. Catastrophe mitigation, let's do it first. Most independent agencies, right? When I'm going to say most, are not large enough in terms of just their hit in that catastrophe year. Maybe they're not large enough to write their way out of that alone, right? And again, this is where I'm going to be tagged with some bias. Well, you run an agency network. You're just promoting the agency network. It's just numbers, right? I'm not necessarily just promoting the agency network concept, but the network itself can help mitigation there. But the individual agent, unless you're 100 million in premium, you're, maybe 50 million in premium at the smallest, you're probably not going to mitigate your catastrophe enough to be writing in other states alone. So I don't think it's a good benefit there. Where I do think it's a little bit different is the issue of, does it help with the valuation? Again, a Shane Pinion here, maybe, as you would call it. I think you're more valuable when you're concentrated and you've got a really strong local book. If I'm looking at your agency and you have stuff spread thinly across a few extra states, like, I don't know if I want to mess with that. Like, you've got this nice book of business here in your resident state, but 20% of your business is spread across these 4 non-resident states that you got into. And that's just going to be a mess for me. I think I'm out. You just become less attractive, my view. If you've got, you're a San Antonio based agency or you're a Buffalo based agency, and that's where your business is, and I know that I'm going to get all of it right there, I'm looking for that as a buyer. Like, I'm looking to expand my footprint. Most buyers, true buyers, are looking to expand their geographical office footprint for the most part. Now that's attractive to me. But to be thinly scattered across a half a dozen states, that's an efficiency nightmare for me. I don't really think that's very attractive.
Here's the thing for me, because there's a catch-22 in my mind. How do you get started when you're trying to scatter like this? Because you go to the carriers and you say, well, I don't really have anything yet, but I'm going to do this one and it might turn into 2 or whatever. Okay, maybe you can get one carrier to say yes.
Yeah.
Okay, now what? You have a carrier. You don't have enough volume to get more carriers, and nobody's going to say yes until you can show that you can do something in this other area. And if you only have one carrier, you're not going to accomplish anything.
Yeah.
This is the most non-Tanya thing that Shane may have ever heard me say, but growth without process creates chaos, right? And our whole idea for this year, and Shane's phrase of the year, is embracing the chaos. But if you don't have the right multi-state systems in place, don't even think about doing this, right? I mean, can your systems handle it? Are your people trained for it? Is your tech ready for it? And my for instance on this is, we do have a retail agency right here at Integra, and my car insurance is written through our retail agency. I have a fantastic agent. I love Amy. She takes wonderful care of me. But when we bought our house, we had the conversation, and Shane felt as though it was better for me to get my homeowner's insurance through someone here in Florida that knows more about what we deal with from a cat perspective. Yes, we are licensed in Florida. Integra could have written my insurance. At the time, we didn't have any agents in Florida. So I chose an independent agent based on friendship, knowledge, people that are in my supper club group. Then when we purchased our boat, and I had the same discussion, Shane said, I think I would feel better if you had somebody that knows more about boats in Florida take a look at it. Right. And so, yes, we could have written those things internally, but the conversation that we had was, it's better to go with someone local that knows what you're dealing with. And we didn't have the systems at Integra retail at the time to do what I needed to do.
That is also an efficiency issue, right? Like
Mhm.
we understand at our office here in East Texas, we understand what our strengths and weaknesses are. Even though we're in Texas, we're 3 hours from the coast. We do not write coastal business. We refer that business down to one of our partner agents who's on the coast, right? And we give them, hey, here's 3 of our partner agents down on the coast. I recently had a friend of mine who had moved up here, bought a place near the lake, big account for us on a personal lines basis, like auto, really nice home, RV, side by side. It was just a really nice account. And they grew weary of not being close to the grandkids who were down where they originally came from. So they sold their place here. They went back to the coast and they bought a place on the water. And it was out of our expertise. It was just an area that our retail unit, even though it's in the state of Texas, it was in an area that's not in our expertise. And this is something that Tara Graham, our retail operations director, is very, very disciplined about. Like, hey, this is how you get into an E&O. This is how you get yourself in trouble, is trying to do stuff that you don't do every day, trying to do Texas windstorm insurance policies when you don't do them every day. And so this is there are geography related questions around this, the whole non-resident situation and what do you do? And you don't want to lose a client. But there's another view of this, and it's loss control. It's risk management.
Are we just going to gloss past the fact that Tanya used a term that is never used by anyone under the age of 95? Supper? Did you say supper?
I didn't understand what she said. I was just going to just ignore it and move on past it. But yeah, if it was truly supper, yeah, I haven't said that since 1988 when I got called in for supper. So
Supper club. You don't,
Supper
I mean,
club.
you know, like when you all get together and you have supper.
yeah, no, we have dinner.
Okay.
That's right.
We have dinner.
So I didn't know, like, you know, down south, you know, lunch is dinner and dinner is supper.
No, it is. I get you. I'm with you. We call both. I get it. Like, it's weird, but I haven't used supper in a while. What's for supper? You know what? No, you know what, Mike? I think I actually asked what was for supper last night. Sorry.
Yeah. So what's
Sorry.
for supper? Do you want hot supper or you want cold supper? You
Yeah.
know, that's a thing here.
You want me to go pick up supper?
Yeah.
I think I actually said that last night. And it was like, no, we're having enchiladas. I was like, ooh, great.
So let's try to get back on the rails here. So that's my fault. Is there a difference? Because in my mind, there is, about where you are trying to get to in an agency. So we've talked in the past, or even at our conference, about solopreneur versus enterprise. You know, the problem with doing this in solopreneur is there's an opportunity cost to every single thing you do, right? Yeah. If you're going to devote some time and energy to this other state or other states, now that's time you're not putting into your actual state of business you could be getting from there. Now, if it's in the enterprise environment and maybe you have the resources to hire a producer in that area, okay, well, you know, that might be a little different.
Sure. Different story, right? I absolutely think it's, again, it is situational, and there are differences to this. I think the problem is that people don't understand the differences. They don't understand that it is not nothing, to use a terrible Southern term that I love to use all the time. Like, it costs money. It's a distraction. There's huge opportunity loss, cost there. I think you're right, Mike. Like, I have this thing beyond just non-resident states. Like, I would go into things like if you're a focused personal lines agent, don't get into commercial until you're paying the bills and creating a standard of living for yourself. Vice versa, right? If you're a commercial lines agent, don't get into personal until you're paying the bills, until you've got some stability. I think this applies to don't jump into the non-resident environment in other states where you got to learn possibly some different insurance code situations. I mean, are they how do they view, PIP, personal injury protection? Are they, a not at fault state? There's a whole lot of technicality that goes into those questions that some agents may not even know, because it's like, I don't even know what that means because your state doesn't do that. Right. And so you have to be careful as an agent to not get like consumerized with this. Like, oh, it's just insurance, right? Like insurance is insurance. Well, insurance is not insurance, right? It's different from each state, and you got to become the expert to that. I'm just a big proponent of grow to the level that you have reached some financial comfort. Then you can think about, where do you want to invest? And unfortunately, most business owners, this is not just insurance agencies. I was guilty of it. I sometimes still do it. We start to think about growing our business in a different direction before we're ready. That happens a lot, right? I mean, if you're the Founder, the movie, The Founder, there's a scene where he's like go check on one of his franchises and they're trying to sell tacos, and he's like going ballistic. Like, we don't sell tacos, right? We don't do, we sell burgers, this way. And
this is the McDonald's movie, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The McDonald's movie. Right. And it's like, that's a little different. I know I'm using a franchise example, but like it can apply to us in the independent agency world, because we can do so many different things, but we shouldn't all the time. Like that, we shouldn't until we're ready, right? We need foundational revenue before we get off into some of these things.
I think some agents see this idea of collecting licenses as kind of a trophy. In other words, people are going to be more impressed with them if they can say, I'm licensed in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, that, they put all of that at the bottom, in their email signature. And it's not really strategic. It's more of that I'm bigger or I'm whatever. And, they feel as though it makes them look like they're more proficient.
Absolutely. I went through this phase in my late 20s where, I would have said if you would have asked me at 28, like, what do you want your insurance firm to look like? I would have said, well, I want it to be, Integra Insurance or Integra Financial or whatever it is there in the, and I want it to be like, I don't know what we call them, but it's like Integra Financial or Integra, Houston, Dallas, Chicago, Boston, New York. Like I want those city labels. Like I went through this phase where I thought that was really cool and awesome, because that was kind of during the period of Financial Superstore when we got some, we went through this period where it was going to be investments, insurance, banking, everything under one roof, which is why we went from Huntington Insurance to Integra Financial. We fell for it. And our legal name is still Integra Financial, even though we do nothing with financial. We are insurance, property and casualty insurance, 100%. And so we went through that same period, and that was something to be able to tell people at a reception, at a carrier reception, right? Like, so where's your office? Oh, we have 10 offices in these cities, right? And it's like, what are we doing? Why do, and I've obviously gotten old and matured since then, but I think we get caught up in that. And it's sort of that comparison game, and it's not good for our business.
Well, we know you've gotten old because you used the word supper.
I did.
Just to circle back on what you had said about, state specific things, it's also, I think, important to note that obviously not all states are created equal, and some of them are way more regulatory than others. You get into your Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Florida,
California.
There are big time differences there that you have to be aware of.
There are, and I think that's definitely, low hanging fruit to investigate. Why I think a licensing firm is probably worth it. I would not want to try to get licensed. We did it for a while. If I'm an agent, I would not want to get licensed in another state without somebody holding my hand. Just me. I know it's paperwork and you can go fill it out and go do it, but did you really cross all the T's and dot all the I's? Did you really do everything you needed to do? That's just me. That's how I feel these days. I know people like to save money, but it's worth the money. If you're going to make the investment and grow into other states, get you a licensing firm that can work with you, that you can, have as a vendor, like any other things that you do. And so I think that's really important as well.
So my question to you is, with the idea of remote work, we're on this call right now. You're in Texas, Mike's in New York or South Canada, whatever. I'm in Florida. So in theory, with the three of us, you could build this idea of a borderless agency with remote teams. Is that not that we're going to do that, obviously, but I'm just saying, like, does the idea of hiring people in states to put it all under your agency, would that work?
And I just want to clarify the question, but do you mean from a insurance, like you're going to hire in other states from a sales standpoint, or just people, just employees that did different functions?
Or hiring producers. In other words, if you had started a new agency, and you knew me from whatever, and you're going to hire me to sell in Florida. You knew Mike from a past relationship. You're going to hire Mike to be your salesperson in New York. You have Deanna. Deanna's going to be your salesperson in Louisiana. So would that work from a state expansion concept?
It can, if you have the right people, right? So we're going to assume that, okay, these people and you have the right people, and man, they're going to be great at this. I think that's the biggest challenge, right? Like having someone that can immerse themselves in the state that you're trying to expand into. I think it's kind of the biggest challenge, right? You can hire the licensing firm. You can deal with the compliance side. You can manage the carrier conversations and go there and get that done. So then it's like, are you going to we're just going to use our example, build on that example. So our organization is home based in Texas. So I would much rather say, hey, Tanya, grow Florida, sell in Florida, you're in Florida, become immersed in Florida, and become our Florida expert, and every opportunity in Florida is going to come to you, versus, hey, Brittany, I know you're in Texas, here in East Texas, but we want you to grow the Emerald Coast business there in Florida. It can be done, but it's much more difficult. Number one, you're not going to get any community relations out of that. No, you're not going to get local referral sources. You're not going to be immersed in that local culture or community. It's going to be much harder. So yeah, I think that's a much better way to go about it if you happen to have the people first.
Do you guys feel like 2025 started showing a pulling back of remote work?
Well, I think it was all over the news. Yeah, there was definitely a return to office. RTO. I heard somebody say it the other day. Oh yeah, we're in an RTO. I was like, what are they talking about? Oh, return to office, right? So the corporate world has I think definitely initiated that. Obviously, government agencies, Trump administration, big initiative through what was it called? Elon's original role there. That became a big deal, right? There's lots of people that were furloughed because they didn't want to move, and they were allowed to move during COVID, and so So I think for sure it was a big move away from that, but yet I still see smaller firms still handling the remote thing maybe better, and even growing their remote workforce in some cases.
I've seen a lot of turnover because of it. People that have been at companies for years that when they started putting RTO in place have left and gone somewhere else, especially if they live in a large city, because the idea of going back to commuting 4 hours a day,
Yeah.
just, yeah. So I think people have been trying, and I think there is some of it, but I don't think the media is covering the flip side of it, where people are actually leaving jobs and not really having that reaction. So,
But I think, whether you're enterprise or a solopreneur, you're still small business, right?
Absolutely.
Anyone we're getting to here is small business. So you have to know who you are before you tackle remote work. If you're a micromanager, that's going to drive you crazy.
That's right. There are some really good books that you need to read. One of them, the Rework, the guys from 37 Signals. There's a podcast called Rework. They wrote a book on remote, and it's fantastic. And there's a ton of trust that has to be extended. And matter of fact, I need to read it again because I'm not sure what y'all are doing every day. So I probably need to read it again.
So ultimately, we have talked about personal lines all day today. Maybe we'll do a follow-up about commercial, because commercial has a very different look when it comes to its state expansion. And are we following states? Are we following niches? So do y'all want to come back to that one on the next episode?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I know Mike has some thoughts around commercial there. And I think when you start to get into the niche business, also, I want to not forget to come back and talk about a little more geography, especially around the Northeast, because I think things look a little different in the Northeast when it comes to the cross,
because they have the little bitty states.
Yeah. I mean, look, you can, Rhode Island's going to probably write more than Rhode Island. I'm sorry. Right. Like when you can go to lunch in another state, we can't down here in Texas. It'll take us a day to get out of the state. But, when you can go to lunch in another state, you're probably doing business in that other state. And so that may not resonate as well. Right. So I understand agents specifically in the Northeast, or specifically in communities like Kansas City, St. Louis. There's border states, right? Chicago, maybe you're going to write a little bit in Indiana, but you don't have to. But, you just have some different things that are going on dependent on your proximity to that other state. And I don't know that I consider that the same thing. And then you also have to think about this whole niche thing around commercial lines. And I think there's a whole reason there where you may need to be broader geographically, right?
I am going to leave us today with this quote from Bill Walsh. The score takes care of itself when you focus on expansion and execution.
Attitude to choice. Make a great one.
Bye, y'all.
At the Integra Partner Network, we understand that carrier access is the key to your agency's success. That's why Integra offers direct access to top-rated personal and commercial carriers, ensuring your agency thrives in today's challenging market. And with our comprehensive resources, profit sharing and bonus opportunities, technology and peer support, all where you retain 100% of your book with no penalties to exit, Integra is ready to empower you and your agency to find sustained growth. Find your way to Integra. Visit IntegraPartnerNetwork.com today. That's IntegraPartnerNetwork.com.